we do have our quiz tomorrow, and that's March 20th. We have it tomorrow, March 20th. So let's look at some notes. I'm going to start with vertical angles. So remember, with vertical angles and dealing with congruent triangles, you're going to see a lot of things that look like this, where we've got triangle A, B, C, and D, C, E. Okay, because of vertical triangles, it kind of makes that like bow tie look. So we know right here, these two angles are congruent to each other. We call them angle A, CB is congruent to angle DCE. And remember, we can switch them sideways as well. So we've got F, G, and H, J, and these two angles. So angle FHG is congruent to angle JHI. Now, I see how it makes a bow tie, right? Do we agree if we do something like this? These angles right here are not congruent to each other. We cannot use not vertical angles. It doesn't form an X. It makes like a K, right? You kind of see this K thing looking here. That is not vertical angles. It's got to look like the X. Okay. Let's talk about another one we keep using over and over again, reflexive. Right, BD is congruent to BD by reflexive. And we agree that this is not reflexive, right? So I'm kind of trying to give you one that looks like it's supposed to say it, and one that doesn't. So we've mentioned this next one a few times, and I want to make sure you get it. So we're writing these down, right? I'm trying not to go too fast. BD is congruent to BD by reflexive. Can I move it up?
Oh, yeah.
Just so you can see reflexive still, but the rest is okay? Okay, we're going to do something called midpoint next. So midpoint, I have to be clear, it has to state that it is a midpoint. Okay? So if I say BD, if I say D is the midpoint, of AC, what does that mean? What two things are congruent if I say D is the midpoint of it? When I cut something at its midpoint, that's cutting it in the what of the middle, right? It's the middle. If something's the middle, both what are congruent to each other? Both halves, right? So AD would be congruent to DC. Okay? So if I just have a picture where I go like this, and it doesn't say that D is the midpoint, then it's not. Has to say. Otherwise, it's not midpoint. Okay, it has to state it. The next thing we're going to talk about is bisecting. Can I move this up? As long as I don't make it disappear. Stop me if I need it. Next thing we're going to talk about is bisect. First, we're going to talk about bisecting angles. So, my same picture that I did for midpoint. And I'm going to state that BD bisects angle ABC. Do you remember what bisect means? Cut in two, cut in half again. But this is an angle, so my angle is ABC. So that means the two things that are congruent our angle ABD is congruent to angle CBD. Okay. That's when I'm bisecting an angle. Again, it's not bisecting if I just have this and there's no statement about it. I can't call this bisecting. It has to state these words. Okay, I'm moving midpoint away. Moving bisecting angles up. Now I can also bisect a side. So my same picture, but look at what I'm stating. BD bisects AC. So this is almost the same thing. It's slightly different because it's just stating differently. It's almost the same as my midpoint. This is now stating that AD is congruent to CD. Again, if I just have that picture with no statement, it is not true. Must have this statement saying these are congruent now. One more. This is, you're going to have to remember this from your take-home quiz. I've got segment AB, and it is parallel to segment DC. Cut it by a transversal, and I'm saying these two angles are congruent to each other. Who remember what's that called? Yeah. Two parallel lines, cut by a transversal. These two inside the parallel lines, across from each other, what is that called? Alternate interior angles. Remember, I'm stating these are parallel. If AB is parallel to DC, I know that that's true. So I know angle ABD is congruent to angle CDB. I also know these, right? Because they have to be the opposite ones. So those are also alternate interior angles. I know angle CBD is congruent to angle ADB. This is all by alternate interior angles. Okay? If I don't state they're parallel, I can't say anything about it. If not parallel, can't do that. Okay, I've got 2 more things for notes and then we're done. So this is triangle congruency. We practiced this a little bit. I've got 2 triangles. I know they're congruent. So I have triangle ABC is congruent to triangle DEF. So we have to state all of the things that makes them congruent. So let's list our angles. What is congruent to angle A? D. What is congruent to angle B? Angle E. What is congruent to angle C? Good. Okay, what is congruent to side AB? D. Going around, so we know these 2. We've got this. We've got this. We've got this. Now BC is congruent to what side, guys? Yeah. And finally, CA is congruent to FD. So there'll be a problem like this where they'll give you like a picture. They won't give you any of this stuff. And they'll say, tell me they're congruent. Okay. All right. Now, last thing, we're going to list all the ways triangles are congruent. All the reasons we have that you could possibly choose from. Can I move this up or do you guys need this? Okay. So if you're done writing this down, try to come up with all the ways that side, side, side is one way. You come up with the others. Excuse me. Sorry. Like that when it's on a microphone, right? Like echoes. Sweet. Miss Murphy's cough. You got one. Okay, I'm gonna move this up. So I said side, 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 guys. What are the other ways? Angle, angle, side, I heard. What else? Angle, side, angle. What else? Angle, side, side is not a thing. We've got hypotenuse leg. Good. Side, angle, side. Are we good? Okay, remember that side, side angle only works if it's a right triangle. Only works if it's a right triangle. We proved that on Friday. Okay? So these are your possibilities. You have to have 3 things for everything, including, I know hypotenuse leg says there's only 2, the hypotenuse and the leg, but remember it has to be a right triangle. Then you need hypotenuse and leg. All the rest, you need those 3 things. Now let's look at our quiz review for just a second because there is a typo. Okay. Right here, I will put that back up in just a second. Right here, this is supposed to go over here. So move that for number 2. There's no WPQ or YPZ there. Okay. Make sure you're looking. This is bisecting an angle, not a side. But you only have 6 problems. If you need to do them on a separate sheet of paper, feel free, but you should be able to get this done. Okay?